how do you take a modified version of the Oath of Allegiance or receive a waiver to the Oath of Allegiance if you're going to naturalize? I'm Erick Widman, I'm an immigration lawyer, and the final step in your naturalization journey is taking the Oath of Allegiance. And it is typically a really happy day at USCIS. You're being sworn in, you're given an American flag to take home, you receive an application to apply for a passport. But the heart of that ceremony is taking the Oath of Allegiance, where you're solemnly swearing to uphold the US Constitution, to take really meaningful steps with your life for the rest of your life. So it's a very solemn, important occasion for you at this final step of the naturalization journey. However, USCIS does not require everyone to take the exact same Oath of Allegiance if you have good reasons for seeking either a modification or a full waiver of that oath. And so the common scenario where someone will seek a modified version of the oath is where you have a sincerely held religious belief or a deep moral conviction that parts of the oath require you to do things you cannot do. So if you're a pacifist, conscientious objector, you're absolutely unwilling to bear arms, then there is a process for applying for the modified oath that you can follow through. You can submit applications to seek that modification, and it's typically granted after USCIS confirms that it is sincere, this is not a quick new passing fad, and that you have sufficient proof for that. We'll also talk about how to apply for and receive a waiver if necessary. But in order to take a modified version of the oath, you have to meet a three-part test. And those three parts are, number one, you are opposed to bearing arms in the armed forces or opposed to any type of service in the armed forces. Second, this objection is grounded in your religious principles to include other belief systems similar to traditional religion or a deeply held moral or ethical code. So that second criterion there, it is not necessary to have a specific religious belief. It can be part of your moral code. It has to be genuine. Finally, there is a third requirement, and that is that your beliefs are sincere, meaningful, and deeply held. So all three of the criteria must be met in order to qualify for an oath modification. You're also able to seek a modification to two potential clauses. Two different clauses can be modified, but one of them cannot be. So the ones that are allowed to be modified, effectively removed and replaced, you're able to get out of the clause that says to bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by law. The other one is to perform non-combatant service in the US Armed Forces when required by law. And so the criteria for showing that you have a sincerely held belief related to those two clauses that can be removed, that's all interconnected. That's not an accident. And so that three-part test directly deals with those specific clauses in the oath that a conscientious objector or a pacifist would take issue with. However, everybody, including pacifists, conscientious objectors, everyone, cannot remove the following part of the standard oath. This clause has to remain in there. Quote, to perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law. So everyone has to be willing to do that in the event of a national emergency, when there's a big problem. It doesn't involve violence or the military or bearing arms. In addition, there are some naturalization applicants who are simply unable to take the oath of allegiance. And in those circumstances, a full waiver of the oath requirement is appropriate. And the most common category for this are children who are 13 and under. The law deems, USCIS deems, that younger kids, 13 and under, are unable to understand the oath and all those big words, so they're not forced just to say it, mouth it, and rote memorization, or just repeat after the officer giving the oath, because it is not going to be meaningful for them. And so if a child is deriving citizenship, naturalizing and receiving a certificate of naturalization, certificate of citizenship, they, if they're under that age, don't have to take the oath. That's a waiver automatically given to them. The other main category of those who would receive a waiver are individuals, applicants with a medical or physical disability. And that disability, it's typically a medical issue. It can be mental or physical. And there is no specific time when you have to request the waiver. We recommend doing it in the beginning of the application if you can. When you file the N-400, also start working on the required proof, because you'll need to get a doctor's letter or a letter from another required professional who's qualified to issue a diagnosis, and write in this letter why the applicant is unable to understand the oath and therefore needs a waiver. And so that document is crucial, that's required. Qualified medical doctor or other professional, and that can be presented in the very beginning or even as time goes on. And if an issue comes up or a disability arises or is diagnosed after you've applied, you can submit that request at the interview or even afterwards. There's a fair amount of flexibility with USCIS. They say throughout the entire naturalization process, you're able to submit that waiver request. We hope this helps. We know the conditions can be confusing. Definitely get in touch if we can help, and take care.